We Real Cool by Gwendolyn Brooks is one of the most famous poems of the 20th century, and it inspired one of the most famous writing prompts or forms of the 21st. Terrance Hayes' Golden Shovel works like a more sophisticated version of an acrostic, whereas an acrostic works like this. The Golden Shovel takes one or more lines from an existing poem and places them as the final word in each successive line of a new poem. It seems simple, but it's much more sonically interesting than an acrostic because you have this vague echo of the original poem in the new one. We use the Golden Shovel as a writing prompt for a lot of our high school programs because both Brooks and Hayes were multiple-time performers and longtime friends of our nonprofit organization. Both of these poets are great formal innovators. Hayes has this great line about breakdancing clone of yourself wearing a straitjacket, and he suggests that all things being equal, the one that's wearing a straitjacket is going to win. In other words, if you introduce constraints to your work, it can kind of squeeze language and produce more interesting results. By the way, if you're in Pittsburgh September 12th and 13th, we're hosting a series of readings and workshop with Terrance Hayes, Billy Collins, Ross Gay, and other poets from Pitt Poetry Series in partnership with the University of Pittsburgh Press. All of these poets, but Hayes in particular, have a strong tie to Pittsburgh. Hayes' first book is still in print with CMU Press, and here's what he had to say about Pittsburgh when we hosted him for a reading last year.
What were the early days of your Pittsburgh experience like for you in terms of developing your set of influences?
I'm so glad you asked that because I say this when I'm traveling. I just became a poet here. I was not a poet where I grew up. Coming to Pittsburgh, it was my first time both becoming a poet and people seeing me as a poet, and my first time just sort of trying to figure out what that was. I went to the library, I read a lot of stuff, but I did not know what poetry was, even though I was writing it, you know what I mean?